Howdy there, Isaac here. This series absolutely popped off, and while I expected it to be popular, you guys shot it out of the water in terms of views. Anyways, after the defeat of Boo, what will Gotenks' family think of him, and how will he deal with the fallout? Let's see what may have happened if all fusion was permanent. The story starts now. Gotenks had been asleep for the better part of a day, something that worried both Gohan and their two mothers. Speaking of them, while Chi-Chi was worried as to what they would do, Bulma had accepted this whole situation pretty well. The scientist understood that her son was a Saiyan. He would have done whatever he thought he needed to do, just like his father. And while it took Chi-Chi a little more time, she also came to this same conclusion, eventually accepting that her son did a good thing, even if the end result was him being fused permanently. The two families discussed what they were to do now. Would Gotenks go to public school, or would he have private tutors? Would they be living at Capsule Corp or Mount Paozu? And most importantly, were they really still Goten and Trunks, or someone different? Well, these questions were soon answered when Gotenks suddenly awoke and asked about Piccolo and the others. Gohan revealed that they had gathered the Dragon Balls, but still had to wait for some time, but that everyone else was alright. The fusion nodded before getting dressed and beginning to walk away. Gohan tried to stop the fusion, but they said they needed some alone time and burst off. They continued to fly far away until coming upon a rocky mountain overlooking a large, sprawling town. It was then that the fusion sat down and watched the people walking around said city. Gotenks reflected on what he was going to do, what he already did. The fusion was created for one purpose, to destroy Boo, and that was accomplished. So what was his purpose now? Should he go back to being a regular kid? Should he train to take Goku and Vegeta's place now that they were gone? Gotenks was only sure of one thing at the moment, though. He couldn't go back to the life he, or his components, had. Goten and Trunks were too playful and hardly took anything seriously. What if someone like Boo came around again? What if Gohan and Piccolo couldn't take care of it? What if this time they both get killed and there was no way to bring them back? The fusion thanked their lucky stars that Piccolo could be revived, but it's still their fault he was offed in the first place. They vowed to train and keep the Earth safe while he was gone, and so time did its thing and began to pass. Gohan naturally was able to find the fusion, but allowed them to stay within the mountains, though he did come around from time to time. One day, he even brought a large capsule home from Bulma, along with some home-cooked meals from Chi-Chi, something the fusion reluctantly accepted. Whenever questioned about why they stayed away from everyone, Gotenks always said it was his turn to grow up and protect the Earth, but never said anything else. Gohan somewhat understood this feeling, and tried to comfort his younger half-brother, but the fusion wasn't exactly reciprocating. Gohan gave them their space, but he still wanted to be there for them, like Goku was for him. Months passed like this, with Gotenks training and figuring himself out. True, he was made up of two individuals, but the time he spent alone proved useful in reflecting on who he was, and what he wanted as his own person. Gotenks was powerful, yes, but he was also someone who could be depended upon in other ways. He was a hard worker and smart, just like his master Piccolo. And most importantly, he was the superhero. Taking after Gohan, Gotenks began fighting crime and protecting his own city, which turned out to be Nikki Town. Within a month, he spread his services to nearby towns, even going as far as West City. Things were going well for the young Saiyan, until one day when a strange man was threatening to jump from a tower. Gotenks intercepted him, and the stranger introduced himself as Hoi, before asking if the fusion could open a certain box. The Saiyan was rather suspicious about this box, seeing as criminals have tried to trick him before, but when Gohan and Videl arrive, they inspect it and decide, yeah, it's definitely something magical. They try bringing it to Bulma, with Gotenks only going to keep an eye on this Hoi guy. She, after giving Gotenks a large hug, examines the box and also agrees it's a magical item, and thus Shenron or Dende might be able to open it. This shocks the Fusion since he thought they'd use Shenron to revive Piccolo, but Bulma reveals the Dragon Ball should be ready to use in a week and could revive both Piccolo and open this box. Gotenks is excited about the prospect of seeing Piccolo again, but then a dense ball of anxiety creeps into his stomach. Piccolo would probably hate them for what happened. He'd probably never forgive them for not taking Boo seriously. I mean, they kind of felt like Gohan and Bulma didn't like them for that reason, but Piccolo definitely wouldn't, since he was the one who died. This caused the Fusion to quickly fly off towards his house and lock himself inside. Maybe if he just stayed inside for a while, this could all blow over. Or maybe if he just stuck to Nikki Town, he'd be fine. It's not like Piccolo would go out of his way to find Gotenks or anything like that, right? Well, a week passed, but instead of feeling Piccolo's ki, Gotenks felt a malevolent energy in a nearby town. He immediately flew over and discovered what seemed to be half a kaiju wrecking the city. The Fusion, along with Gohan, was able to blast the kaiju away, just as Tapion arrived on the scene. This caused Gotenks to accuse Tapion of causing this, but both he and Gohan explain what's happened so far. The Fusion recommends the swordsman stay away from civilization, which Tapion says he was trying to do, but Gotenks still thinks it wasn't enough. He recommends the swordsman stay with him, since the mountain should be able to hold Hirudegarn if he escapes again. Gohan says it's a good plan, although Gotenks may be at risk, but the Fusion brushes this off, saying he could take on the kaiju if need be. Tapion, having no better alternative, agrees and follows the Saiyan to go to his home in the mountains. There, neither of them sleep, both alert and awaiting the enemy. Tapion looks to Gotenks and decides to tell him of what happened all those years on Kanats. After telling the story, he ends it off with a request. I didn't come here for protection or anything of the sort, but because I sense something within you. You're like me, willing to do anything to protect those you hold dear. If we are unable to stop Hirudegarn, promise me you'll take my sword and strike me down. Gotenks couldn't fathom ending Tapion like that, but if there was no other alternative, it was the only choice they had. The Fusion nodded, promising to do so if it meant protecting his family and friends. Tapion smiled softly before saying Gotenks reminded him of his younger brother, though he did need to smile a bit more. This briefly caused the Fusion to smile, breaking his icy exterior just a little bit. The two talked through the rest of the night, but they never saw the dawn, since by the time the sun rose, they were both asleep. That's when Hoi crept in and stole the hero's ocarina, and in one fell swoop, both halves of Hirudegarn were unleashed and made whole once more. Both Tapion and Gotenks woke up at once, them having to burst out of the house before it was crushed by the kaiju's foot. As the swordsman looked upon Hirudegarn and realized his ocarina was gone, his resolve began to wane. They barely beat this monster last time, but now he was alone, and his ocarina was gone. How could Tapion possibly beat this thing now? The beast was about to step on the swordsman, all while Hoi was laughing maniacally, but Gotenks burst in, slamming his fist into Hirudegarn's chest, sending it staggering back.
Snap out of it, Tapion. So what we don't have that stupid flute? You said it yourself. We do anything to protect those we hold dear. So let's do what we can right now.
Gotenks launched a Dai missile barrage at the beast, blowing Hoi off its shoulder and onto the ground below. Tapion stood and drew his sword, cursing himself for giving up so easily, before setting his eyes on Hoi and dashing over. The wizard attempted to run, but it was no use. In a split second, he was gone. However, Hoi did attempt to bribe Tapion with the ocarina, meaning he knew the wizard had it on his body somewhere. While Gotenks traded blows with the kaiju, Tapion located his musical instrument and began playing it, pulling the creature into his body and sealing it with a great amount of effort. Afterwards, he grabbed the sword and threw it to Gotenks.
Hurry, I can't hold it much longer. His ki, it's so dense.
Tapion grabbed his stomach, falling to his knees as if a great weight were upon his shoulders.
Right, stay still.
Gotenks rushed over, sword in hand, ready to swing it down towards the swordsman, but something stopped him. He knew he should hurry, should destroy this monster for the good of Earth, the good of his family. But Tapion didn't deserve that. Yeah, the swordsman was alone, and being alone sucked, but they could be friends. No, they were friends, and no matter what, Gotenks wanted to protect his friends.
No, I won't do it.
Gotenks stepped back whilst focusing on the sword. Tapion had a horrified look on his face, but all he manages to say is, "I'm sorry," before the beast breaks free from him. The swordsman is thrown into a nearby mountain, something that pisses off Gotenks, who begins powering up into Super Saiyan 3 and channeling ki into the sword. Hirudegarn charged the fusion, who dodged out of the way and began slicing pieces of the beast off. Within seconds, the Phantom Majin was sliced into small bits, which were then blasted into oblivion, just as Gohan, Piccolo, and Vegeta arrived. While Gotenks couldn't look at the other two, he ordered Gohan to get in contact with the Supreme Kai. At first the Hybrid Saiyan was confused, but then he remembered something, and it instantly clicked. He, through King Kai, got in contact with Kabuto-shin and Elder Kai, asking them to come to Earth and bring a special item. Hirudegarn began to reform while Piccolo woke Tapion up, telling him they might need his ocarina for it. Meanwhile, once the kaiju was up and about, Gotenks, Vegeta, Gohan, and everyone else there began blasting it into oblivion. But, for as powerful as they were, the beast managed to use its tail to sneakily sideswipe Piccolo and Tapion away, before turning into smoke and reappearing behind Vegeta. Gotenks tried to intercept, but the beast managed to hit Vegeta into the ground. Gohan and Gotenks both rushed in and began cutting and blasting the creature away, but for as fierce as they were, the creature managed to reform even quicker, appearing behind Gohan and aiming a claw straight for his chest. However, Gotenks manages to push his brother out of the way, Hirudegarn's claw piercing straight through his arm. Gohan goes to fly in and help, but Gotenks yells at him to stay away. The teenager couldn't possibly listen to his brother, but then he saw the look in his eyes. Gotenks was livid, and his energy was swelling, but not just swelling, it was being channeled into one of his hands. Just then the Kais arrive, and Gohan nods towards Gotenks, trusting him to hold off Hirudegarn while they begin the process. Gotenks looks up towards the giant monster, and if looks could kill, the beast would be erased from existence. With great effort, the fusion swings his hand forward, sending 5 beams of ki from his fingers. The beams fly around the kaiju before combining behind it and expanding to form a large sphere, cutting off its claw and keeping it contained, this being the fusion's evil containment sphere. Hirudegarn attempts to claw and tear its way out of the sphere, but Gotenks is just barely able to hold it while Elder Kai walks closer and draws a sword out. Gohan and Kabuto-shin put their hands on his shoulder, all three chanting as Hirudegarn stretches the ki sphere, nearly breaking it with its claws. Gotenks struggles to hold it still, but that's when the claw that had been severed reforms in front of him and begins flying straight for his heart. The fusion holds still though. If he moved or let go of Hirudegarn, then Vegeta, Gohan, Tapion, or Piccolo could be hurt again, and he was done letting them get her on his behalf. The claw flew straight into his chest, but before piercing his heart, Tapion began playing his ocarina, drawing the claw away and into himself. But his playing didn't stop there. He continued using the music to weaken the beast, and just in time too, as the power of Super Saiyan 3 took its toll on Gotenks. The fusion fell into base, and his sphere of ki dissipated, but the kaiju still couldn't escape. Elder Kai, with the help of Tapion, drew the Majin into what looked like a regular everyday sword. But as it was sealed, the blade began to transform. The sword now looked like a large, broad butcher's knife, though it was easily larger than the Elder Kai himself. Gotenks was happy everyone had survived this time around, although he definitely had to work on Super Saiyan 3. If the Kais weren't so knowledgeable, everyone would have been done for. On that note, the fusion looked towards Tapion, asking him about the claw, but the swordsman didn't answer, instead walking over and hitting Gotenks atop the head.
Ow, what was that for?
For not doing what you promised. We could have all died, and look at you. Your arm is so damaged you might never use it again.
Tapion pulled out some gauze, but Kabuto-shin walked over, slightly out of breath, and began healing Gotenks. The fusion smugly smiled at the swordsman, who simply crossed his arms. But that's when Gotenks felt a hand on his shoulder, him turning to see Piccolo of all people. Oh no, this was it. Piccolo was going to scold him, or hit him, or worse, fight him for letting Boo eat him earlier. Gotenks closed his eyes in anticipation of this.
You did pretty good. You're a far cry from the brats I used to know, but...
Piccolo also smacked Gotenks across the head.
You're doing way too much by yourself. Next time, let us help out more, will you?
Vegeta watched from afar as Gotenks and Piccolo bickered. Despite knowing Gotenks was a separate person, he still considered them his son. And right now, he was pretty proud of them. Meanwhile, Gohan and Elder Kai discussed what they should do with the sword. The Kai suggested they seal it away in Kachikachin deep within the planet of the Kai. However, neither him nor Gohan could pick up the sword. It was simply too heavy. However, someone who could pick it up, after he was healed at least, was Gotenks, though it took going into Super Saiyan 2 to do so. The fusion said he could hold onto the sword. He is the strongest person there after all, so he could protect it better than anyone else. While the Kais were a bit hesitant, he also had a point, so they allowed it for now. Tapion offered to teach him how to use a sword properly, and everyone ended up going their separate ways, after Gotenks got another capsule house from Bulma, that is. A month passed by, with Tapion teaching Gotenks everything he knew about how to handle a sword. The giant sword did prove to be a great training item, as well as hard to handle, but with some help from Piccolo and Tapion, Gotenks was able to master it. However, once he did, Tapion revealed he was leaving Earth. The fusion, of course, didn't want him to go, especially since that claw was still sealed inside him, but Tapion was resolute in leaving.
Gotenks, you're plenty strong. Strong enough to take care of the Earth and Hirudegarn if he ever gets free again. As for me, well, I have to see what's become of planet Knots, and I feel I'm needed elsewhere. As for the claw, I can handle it. It serves as a reminder of what I've been through, and what I can overcome, especially with some help from my friends. I hope to see you again soon, but until then, this is farewell.
The fusion had to keep himself from crying, but they both felt the same way. The two said their goodbyes, and then Tapion used a Capsule Corp ship to travel back to his home planet. That night, Gotenks decided he too should return home. The fusion packed their things and prepared to deal with everything they had been avoiding up until now. And on that note, this is where we'll be leaving things off for right now. If you guys like this part, I'd appreciate it if you contain that like button with a sphere of ki, or maybe even seal the subscribe button as a reminder of getting through this video. But if you don't, thank you guys for getting to this point in the video anyways. Now, I'm sorry for not getting 2 videos out this week, but as always, things happen. I'll always try to get 2 videos out a week, but sometimes we'll only have 1. However, it seems you guys don't mind too much since my views and subs have still been going up like crazy. Honestly, you guys are the best, and seeing all the comments on here really get me excited to get new parts out. I also really hope you guys enjoyed this video, since I know it's a little more down to earth and emotional than the lighthearted stuff from Salad or Masako, but I think any of you longtime subs know I like stories like this. Anyways, I should stop rambling now. You guys have a good day or night wherever you are. That's it for now. Bye bye.